Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It's very nice to be here in Istanbul on this conference, and really a lot of thanks for the organizers, because it started very well. So I hope you have 15 more minutes, that we are not too tired to listen one more presentation. As said, my name is Boro Goic, and I'm coming from Sarajevo, from a friendly country of Turkey, Bosnia and Herzegovina. So my task today will be to present a Christian approach to sustainable recovery options. But before all, and before getting into presentation, I would like to raise one question, which is very common in current drug policy debates, and that is, what is recovery? So, on this chart, which is presented from ECMDDA, we see the following things. Okay, the term recovery implies a process through which an individual is enabled to move from their problem of drug abuse towards a life without drugs as an active and contributing member of society. So we see it on the chart, it's a process. It's a process which has several stages. It's a process which begins with the stepping out of addiction toward stabilization, toward abstinence, and ends in the integration or the social integration. And that's very important to remind in our heads wherever we are operating. So there are three stages. And when we look at the medical approach, so there is addiction and there is a stabilization. So medical approach is very easy to reach stabilization and to reach abstinence. But sometimes there are not enough attempts, or there are not enough methods, and there are not enough programs how we can reach the total integration. So through that process, we reach sometimes a fragile abstinence. And that abstinence sometimes, because it's not strong, because it's not ending in the integration, can be so fragile that sometimes addictive people are going back to the addiction. So basically, integration is the phase where the recovering addict experiences and adopts change in the lifestyle and behavior, becoming an active and contributing member of society, fully integrated and recovered. So I would like to say that no man or no woman is born as an addict and don't need to finish his or her life as an addict. So everybody deserves a chance. And I think that we all, wherever we are operating, needs to use a multidisciplinary approach wherever we are operating, and to have a common goal, which will start with the going out of addiction but end in the recovery. So there are many methods and approaches which lead to desirable changes in behavior, which can then continue to successful integration and the full recovery. Some of them are based on the psychosocial methods. Some of them are based on the peer-to-peer education or work. Some of them are based on the 12 steps approach. But I will explain a little bit about Christian approach, how we can get to recovery. So basically, what is the Christian approach when we talk about that, what that is? So Christian recovery programs fully integrate the Bible and the teachings of Jesus Christ, making their eternal wisdom constant components of the recovery process. So by connecting the process of recovery to the development of the personal relationship with Christ and to the renewed and restored faith in God, a Christian-focused programs all but guarantees that addicts experience a deeper sense of recovery. That recovery heals the spirit as well the mind and body, and bring new understanding of life with new attitudes and values that lead to desirable changes that don't have more in common than any kind of drug abuse. And that's very important to mention, that kind of recovery brings a change inside of behavior and values that have nothing more in common with any drug abuse. We are not talking anymore about soft drugs or hard drugs. We are talking about changing inside of behavior which brings to that point in the life where recovering addicts don't have nothing anymore with any kind of drug abuse. And that's very, very important. And that's nothing new. It started That's nothing new. It started even in the late 1700s, where Christianity was a tool to combat alcoholism in the Native American tribes, where the missionaries been talking about coming back to faith principles to a people who had the problems with alcohol. Even in the early 1900s, some first medical facilities involve some elements of Christianity in that psychiatries. So, and then in the 1950s, some grassroots movements start to make that Christian approach. But the main thing, what happened, it's from the 1970s until today, to present. And that are new standards for how to approach addiction, then start to be a modern intervention models, and the decreasing number of Christian residential rehabilitation centers start to be opened. And also through the opening of the Christian residential rehabilitation centers, it started to be growing number of the recovered addicts who joined the movement. Also, there are also many individual programs that can be derived from the biblical principles. Among them, there are 12 steps programs which are based in the churches. There are self-help groups which are established in the different NGOs, but all of them have the same goal, and this is that through the biblical principles and faith bring understanding to the recovering addicts to take principles which have nothing else with a drug abuse. So I would like a little bit to show you this house. It's a house in Spain, in Coruña. It's a residential center. Teen Challenge, small house in America. House in Austria, residential centers. So, I would like to explain the 5 key points how that Christian approach can bring recovery to an addict. What is so powerful there? What is so changing? What we accept can change a recovered addict behavior and bring him to a position in life when he don't have nothing anymore with the drug abuse. So, number one is love and acceptance. So when we look at the life of the addictive persons, most of them have a problem with rejection. This is like some ripple effect caused through their deviant behavior, because the addictive people are not doing always the good stuff. So a lot of times they are marginalized, they are on some distance, even from their families. Faith brings understanding that God loves them and always loved them. And that kind of unconditional love brings understanding and change to the persons that they don't want anymore to be the same persons as they were. Other things, it's a forgiveness. So in the recovery process, every addict has to deal with his or her past. So in the period of addiction, many people been dealing drugs or pickpocketing or doing very bad things. Some went to the prostitution or something like that, yeah. And this addiction is really overwhelming force which shut down the consequence and brings the addicts inside of that kind of conflict. Okay, during that phase, during the phase of addiction, addicts don't think so much about what they did in the moment. That conscience is pretty closed. But in the period of abstinence, when they reach abstinence, then suddenly that whole the feelings of resentment, of guilt, of shame are coming like one huge burden upon them. And I can tell you from my own example. So I was 14 years inside of drug addiction, and 8 years I was shooting heroin. So I remember when I was using the drugs, so I didn't thought about all my misdeeds. But in the period when I was abstinence, when I reached the abstinence, when I came to the rehabilitation center, it's like the whole past was upon me. And it is something what I cannot say, okay, I will forgive it. It's not something what I can say, okay, I will throw it somewhere. No, it's something spiritual. It's something what I cannot touch. So it's a forgiveness what God gave to me, and through that forgiveness, it was like a clearly line what it was like this is the past and this is the future. So I could start to build my future not upon the burdens from the past. And this is very important for the people who are in recovery. And I can tell that the forgiveness is vital to the person's ability to move forward with their life in a positive and productive manner. So past is behind recovering addicts, and there is a future in front of them. So third principle is setting new priorities. So if we want to describe the life of one addict, it's a really mess. Everything what should be in the first place, in the first priorities, it's on the last place. They don't care so much about families, about everything, but everything what should be on the last place, it's on the first place. So somehow I can describe it that it's that life what the addicts are living is too egocentric. Bible and the biblical principles bring totally new priorities in the life. God is on the first place, and the others are on the second place, and I am on the third place. What that means, God is on the first place. What that means, others, who are others? So that means that we should put God on the first place with the values and with that will. And the others can be our family, it can be somebody from our friends, or it can be somebody that we are absolutely don't know, but suddenly we want to help and serve to that people. Because God is invisible and abstract. But through the serving people, we are serving God. And based on a lot of experiences, I saw many people who are starting to do like that, to put new principle in the life, and suddenly it changed the purpose of the life. It changed really the behavior. They've been not anymore egocentric so much. They start to think about values, they start to think about other people. And that brought recovery inside of that people. Then belonging and fellowship. So man is born as a human being, and it cannot exist alone. And addicts needs environment where they are really supported. So what means supported? Supported from the people who are not rejecting them, supported from the people who are loving them, supporting from the people where they can be accountable. So through that fellowship, through the belongings of the finally people who has the purpose in life and who are pushing them in the right direction, recovering addicts suddenly have a feeling that they can live like 100% life, because finally they are part of something good. And we all need support, yeah, isn't it, in the life? It's not only the recovering addicts. Even here in the conference, if the Green Crescent is alone organizing this, it will be different than with the help of the World Health Organization and the ECMDDA. So it feels differently when you are supported in the life. And the fifth thing, and the very important thing, it's influence of example. So, for sure, have you ever been in the place where it's the open drug scene? Like, for example, in Karachi, in Pakistan, or in the junkyards in Madrid, in Spain, or a railway station in the Frankfurt. So the scene, what you will see there, it's really discouraging. When we see that, we think there is really no hope. Or like what from Mexico, the guy was presenting here. When we saw that pictures from the border, it seems like there is no hope. But no, we should look at the tip of that arrow from the beginning of the presentation. We should look at the recovered addicts, And we should see if there are some examples which can encourage people to take multidisciplinary approach and bring people to recovery. So Christian focus approach helps addicts not only to recover, it also finds a way to help them serve and work within the community. So addicts who undertake recovery in Christian setting will likely be invited to participate in various volunteer service activities, providing opportunities to engage with the community in a positive and constructive way. Such opportunities can strengthen the self-esteem of the recovering addict and help show them that they can be valuable members of society. So in fact, many recovering addicts go on to become active participants in Christian service organizations that try to help other addicts through the recovery process. And this is something what is very important. Recovery is not egocentric. It's not I recovered. Yes, I recovered, but recovery is for others. So, and that's very important. So through my engagement in the Balkan region and through my engagement in Recovered Users Network, so I saw many people who recovered from the drug abuse. And they are not on the edge with the drug abuse, no. That their families are very satisfied, that their employers, where they are working, they are peaceful, that people are using second chance in life. So through that, I think that recovered users are examples that winning in life exists. So through these key points, I think that key points have a potential for increasing understanding for the role for the Christian approach in the substance use recovery, developing some research-based intervention to manage addiction and uncover important constructs about addiction recovery for a future study. So for the end, I choose region where I live, and it's a region, I'm living in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but region, it's a region of ex-Yugoslavia, and some things happened. Okay, it's a situation in the 95, so it was a Christian rehabilitation residential centers. So we had 2 in the 1995. In the 2005, so we see with the red Christian Rehabilitation Residential Center, and with the green are Christian NGOs, churches, and other organizations which start to deal with addiction. So suddenly, through that influence of example, people being in the rehab centers, people went out of the rehab centers, coming out back to the community, and start to live the same values, where they have been not anymore egocentric, and looking only what I need, then looking what the community needs. Looking really what are God's values. So through that, in 2005, we had about 1,000% more open rehab centers, and then present situation, even more rehab centers are open, even more NGOs, churches, and other organizations are involved suddenly inside of that problem. Okay, these are photos from a conference which is annual, and it's holding in Sarajevo. It's 8 until now, so it is a conference which is holding different Christian NGOs which are encouraging each other, and now in the last conference it was about 200 people who are together celebrating a new life. So there are some statistics. From the beginning in the Balkan region, from the beginning, it was about 5,500 people who went through the residential rehab centers. So 20% from them completed the program. So it's about 1,100 people. These programs last from the 18 to 24 months, and it's very important to say that inside of residential rehab centers are free, they are self-sustainable. So when the people are out of the people who completed the program, from this 20%, about 80% are successfully abstinent, recovered users. And when we are looking like that, it's a huge number. But never forget that behind these 880 people, or behind that 80%, are staying many families, many employers, many neighbors who are now living totally different life because they are causing good and not bad things. So, some conclusions. Achievements in the Balkan regions are very good results in tackling drug abuse through the involvement of the Christian residential centers, NGOs. It's a high influence on former drug addicts. It's a good response. I cannot tell it's a very good response, but it's a good response about no further marginalization and skepticism regarding the cure of addiction, because this is a common goal. We want really to say that addiction is really curable, that it's possible to recover it. And it's a satisfactory cooperation with institutional treatments. So, challenges. So it's a very little impact of Christian rehab centers and NGOs on drug policy issues in these countries. So they are only working mostly in the grassroots levels, not on the some drug policy fields, what can change through the years something. And this is like also one big problem in that region. It's a huge rate of unemployment among recovered addicts, mostly because of the region which is not so developed. And finally, I would like really to raise the question, is it worth it to believe even when we see some scenes, when we see no hope? Sometimes we see a lot of numbers and statistics which are showing us like it's impossible. But I don't think that is impossible. I think we should all somehow start to encourage people to take the process of recovery, which is not easy. But in some holistic approach, like what Ugur said, in some holistic approach, I think we all can take a part inside of that. And what we want to see on the end is really to see people who struggled with inside of drug addiction, but on the end came out of the drug addiction. Because the society really and world around us needs that and needs the winners. So, and I would like to make a final conclusion with a few biblical verses, and it's love the Lord your God and love the others as you love yourself. So all the law hangs on these two commandments. And if you need more information about work where I'm involved, it's an email address, and thank you for listening.